Hello, this is Chapter 18 Manifest Destiny and Its Legacy, 1841 to 1848. Let's get started. So, what is Manifest Destiny? It was first coined by a newspaper editor, John O'Sullivan, in 1845. And what it reads here is the right of our manifest destiny to overspread and to possess the whole of the continent which Providence has given us for the development of the great experiment of liberty and federative development of self-government entrusted to us. It is right such as that of the tree, the space of air and the earth suitable for the full expansion of its principle and destiny of growth. A myth of the West is a land of romance and adventure emerged during this period of time. And there is a famous painting, American Progress, by John Gast, a little later of 1872. So this whole concept of manifest destiny isn't just going to be moving west. The United States is also going to be trying to claim land even to the north. The Aroostook War of 1839, wars in quotations because it really wasn't a war. Maine declared war on the British, crossing New Brunswick into Quebec. So it's between the Canadian region of New Brunswick and the state of Maine. The cause is the expulsion of Canadian lumberjacks in the disputed area of Aroostook by Maine officials. Congress called up 50,000 men and voted for $10 million to pay for the quote-unquote war. And General Winfield Scott arranged a truce and a border commission was convened to resolve the issue. So didn't happen. You look at the map here. This is the area, the Aroostook region, where it's like light green and then darker green to the north, where you see the cursor here, and the treaty. The boundary lines of Maine, what it is today, is the Webster-Ashburton Treaty. Ashburton was an economic expert sent to the United States to kind of soften up Secretary of State Webster, and they're able to come up with a deal. Texas independence from 1836 to 1845. In this chapter, it's just showing the Republic of Texas and how it eventually becomes the annexation of Texas in 1845. Americans began moving to Texas in the 1820s, brought their slaves with them, and war was fought by Texans against Mexico because they believed their rights had been violated. It was won by the Texans in 1836 and requested to enter the United States, but it won't be until another 9 years. Why did the Texans oppose Mexican citizenship? They did not want to adopt Mexican customs. They did not see Mexico as their own country. Few spoke Spanish, and most found the Spanish Catholic Church alien to them. The major battles of the Texas Revolution, which we looked at in previous chapters. Okay, the Battle of Gonzales, the Mexicans retreat. Battle of the Alamo, the Texans are defeated. All of them are wiped out there, inflicting serious losses on Mexicans. And then the Battle of San Jacinto, the Texans prevail, and that pretty much ends this Texas War of Independence. President Jackson and Van Buren refused to recognize Texas' statehood because of slavery. Texas became its own country with Sam Houston president from 1836 to 1845. Mexico never recognized the independence of Texas. And there's our friend Sam Houston. And here is the Texas annexation in 1845. You notice it goes further into west than was today New Mexico, and further north to parts of what's Kansas and Colorado, all the way to Wyoming. It was entered as a state in 1845. Mexico vowed if Texas became part of the U.S., this would be an act of war. And one cause of the war with Mexico in 1846. There's a nice thing of the Texas Declaration of Independence. And again, the Republic of Texas. You got to remember the Alamo. Here's Davy Crockett's last stand at the Alamo. That's a pretty cool image there. Another famous painting, the Battle of the Alamo. General Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna recaptures the Alamo. And overland immigration to the West between 1840 and 1860, more than 250,000 people made the trek westward. The reasons Americans went west: religious freedom, opportunity to own their own farm, to fulfill this concept of manifest destiny, to convert Native Americans to Christianity, and to act as trailblazers. Here's a nice painting of the Oregon Trail by Albert Bierstadt in 1869. If you look at these different trails westward, the Mormon Trail, the Santa Fe Trail, the California Trail, the Oregon Trail, the Butterfield Overland Mail Route, and you see all of this movement west. So trails to the west, here's again some of them with a chart here. You got the Oregon Trail, California Trail again, Santa Fe, the Mormon Trail, the Old Spanish Trail, Butterfield Overland Mail Trail, and the Pony Express Trail. You can't forget that. So many challenges faced Americans who moved west. The terrain between the frontier and the Pacific was very difficult. You had a big thing, a little thing there called the Rocky Mountains. The typical trip west took 5 to 6 months. Let's think about that. Travelers feared attacks by Native American warriors. So moving ahead to the election of 1844, the Democrats going to nominate James Polk of Tennessee, former Speaker of the House. And what the big issue is during this time is the Oregon dispute. 54-40 a fight. Okay? What should be the boundary between British American, Canada and the United States? Okay? And you got to understand there was a lot of anxiety. There was a lot of tension between the British and the United States in the 1840s with the Aroostook, quote-unquote, war and other boundary disputes and issues in different parts throughout the country, in the Niagara region. So this, by 1846, this joint U.S. occupation is going to end, but it's going to be a major, major issue in the election of 1844. Again, who's nominated by the Whigs? Henry Clay's back. This guy won't go away. There's a campaign flag, Clay and Frelinghuysen. I think Huysen, I don't even know how that's pronounced. That's why they lost. Can't pronounce his vice president nominee's last name. And then this guy, James Burney's the Liberty Party candidate. Now, he's going to make a huge difference because when you look at the vote, he's going to take about 2% of the popular vote, and the popular vote's pretty close in this election. Electoral vote, not so much. And we're looking at some lithographs and cartoons here, Texas coming in. You have Texas the Beast, I fear I cannot carry you into the presidential chair. This is Polk in Texas. And then Polk will say, Dear Texas, I knew you cannot. I wish I had rode some other horse, but it's too late to repent. So Texas becoming into the Union is an issue. Again, it won't become a state until 1845. And here's the 1844 election results. The Electoral College is 170 105, but look at how close that popular vote is, with Bernie getting 2%. I'm sure that made a difference in some of those territories. Excuse me, some of those states. So Polk had a very, very specific agenda, and he vowed he will only serve one term. He would not serve more than one term. First, lower the tariff. Okay, you lower the tariff to bring in more goods and have more choices and competition. 2, resolve the Oregon boundary dispute, which we already looked at. 3, restore the independent treasury. And acquire California. And what's going to lead to this desire to get California is going to be the Mexican War, because California is a part of Mexico. So he's going to send a guy named Slidell, John Slidell, on a mission in November of 1845. What I mean by he is President Polk. And what he wants is Mexican recognition of the Rio Grande River as the Texas-U.S. border. The United States would forgive American citizens' claims against the Mexican government, and the U.S. would purchase the New Mexico area for $5 million, and then the U.S. would buy California basically at any price. This is what he was brought to Mexico City, to offer to the Mexican government. So, the causes and effects of the Mexican War. First, disputes between the U.S. and Mexico over claiming Texas as part of the Louisiana Purchase. The effects, let's look at the idea of Manifest Destiny. Mexican president's refusal to meet with the U.S. envoy to discuss the U.S. purchase of California's territory. Okay? So Mexican president would not even meet with Slidell over it. Mexico's refusal to recognize the independence of Texas. These are all the issues here, causes of the war. The annexation of Texas in the Union in 1845. What are the effects? Mexico ceded the U.S. more than 500,000 square miles of territory, including California, Utah, Nevada, most of New Mexico, and Arizona, and parts of Colorado and Wyoming. The U.S. paid Mexico $15 million and took over Mexico's debts owed to American citizens. So it was a bit more than $15 million. The dream of Manifest Destiny is realized. It goes from coast to coast now. And it revived the question of slavery in new states. That's going to be a big issue. So the war itself, to look at this map here, you can pause and look at that and look at the different campaigns by Fremont in the north into California, Kearney into Southern California. Then you can look at Taylor, Scott. Okay. The prize is California, and John C. Fremont is going to start this Bear Republic Revolt on June 14th, 1846, where his expedition is going to go there and start a fight there in Northern California and try to start the taking of California. Some paintings of the war, General Zachary Taylor at Palo Alto. Old Rough and Ready was Zachary Taylor's name, or nickname. The bombardment of Veracruz. And towards the end of it all, when General Winfield Scott enters Mexico City, he was known as Old Fuss and Feathers. He had a chip on his shoulder, and he wore really old War of 1812 uniforms. Old Fuss and Feathers. The treaty that ends this, the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo of 1848. The American negotiator was Nicholas Trist. Here is the actual visual of that treaty, and what the treaty was basically forced on Mexico. Mexico gave up claims to Texas above the Rio Grande River. Mexico gave the United States California and New Mexico. U.S. gave Mexico $15 million and agreed to pay the claims of American citizens against Mexico, about $3.5 million. So here's another chart. Succeeded 500,000 square miles of territory, except the Rio Grande. They paid 15. So basically, a little over 18 million. The U.S. is going to pay. What are the results of the Mexican War? The 17th month war cost $100 million and 13,000 plus American lives, mostly of disease. New territories were brought into the Union, which forced the explosive issue of slavery to the center of national politics, and brought in 1 million square miles of land, including Texas. These new territories would upset the balance of power between North and South, and it created two popular Whig generals who ran for president. And Manifest Destiny was partially realized. And then there's a map there of the Mexican Cession of 1848. Eventually in 1843, there'll be the Gadsden Purchase that would complete the rest of New Mexico and Arizona. And there you can see it's a short period of time, 12 years. Within 12 years, all those lands were either ceded or annexed or purchased. All right, we're done with this one here, and until next time, thanks.